Let's see. For the fiber ring service, if you are on a spur, is a CGen backup required? And I'm going to look to my panel of presenters. I'm not sure which person wants to take this one. Okay, Brian?
So at a customer site, it's really up to the customer to determine whether their business needs require that kind of redundancy or not. So we don't mandate it. Generally, the sites that connect to the fiber ring services are headquarters sites, and so it might be advisable to have it, but again, that's a customer decision.
Okay. The next question is for David Langston. How are you validating NIST compliance within CalCloud? That's one of several questions.
Okay. As far as NIST compliance, we have engaged with IBM, who has a FedRAMP team internally who have conducted these kinds of assessments for other elements within IBM, and that team, along with OTEC and with their partner AT&T, have gone through and done a self-assessment. I won't get into all the details. I know there's a lot of questions, and we may get another one, whether or not we're FedRAMP, and people use the term certified, and the answer to that is no, simply because FedRAMP is a federal program, and there isn't a provision today to really open that program or for states to participate in it. So we are complying with all of those requirements and controls, but we're doing it from a self-assessed standpoint as opposed to formally doing it through the FedRAMP program. And the last comment I'll make about that is Dave Langston's expectation that as we move forward, the federal government may well require states who have federally funded programs and utilize cloud services to put those into FedRAMP compliant environments. I would expect if that happens, they'll extend that FedRAMP program to the state, and I'm sure at that time we'll participate in that program.
Okay, thanks, David. Okay, this question is actually for Shara. It's related to the unencrypted FTP and Telnet. Can you reach out to the departments you see still using clear text traffic?
We're attempting that. So right now, our systems are shared, and it's often difficult for us to identify the customers because we just see an IP address coming into the mainframe. So there's no identifying characteristics that we can identify some of the customers coming in. I plan to work, hopefully, with our network engineering to identify some of the subnets of customers that we may have on our records. And we are going to try that, but we can't guarantee we're going to reach everybody, especially if they're sharing, subnets and NATs and things like that. So it's a little more complicated, unfortunately. So we aren't able to reach out directly, and so that's why we're asking for your guys' help.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a CGen question. Would OTEC manage routers at customer sites under CGen NextGen? Brian?
So to some degree, it's still going to be a shared responsibility. We're not going to own any edge devices. The vendor will still own that device. And so if there's a hardware problem or failure, the vendor is responsible for that. If an iOS upgrade is required or a security patch or what have you, that's something that the vendor would likely have to provide. How that's actually implemented is something we're going to negotiate with those vendors. For the rest of the software configuration, OTEC would manage that. The vendor would still provide a base level of monitoring. Basically, is it up or down, red light, green light? Our tools currently manage all of the CGen edge devices as well for utilization, fault management, and so on. So to some degree, it's still a shared responsibility, but OTEC will have a greater responsibility on the software configuration of the edge device.
And I would just add that that's part of the negotiation that we're working on with the CalNet team to see how the contract will be amended, because there's a variety of different options that we could use. Okay, this question is related to the fiber ring service. Do you have any plans to extend the fiber ring services to West Sacramento?
I can answer that. Currently, we are working with the city of Sacramento on fiber. Extending it to West Sacramento is currently not the possibility because of the river between the two, and we don't have the fiber accessible to us. But to say that it's not a possibility in the future is something that we are still going to pursue. Brian, would you like to add to that?
I think Gregory's pretty much summed it up, but we're always keeping an eye out for opportunities where we can save money, basically. And so I wouldn't say we would necessarily rule something like that out. We just don't have any current plans for it.
Okay. Thank you. This question is for CalNet. It's regarding CAMS. CAMS is a new application that's being developed here at OTEC. It's the CalNet Application and Management System. And the question is, where are you with CAMS?
Wow, another great question, and I didn't plant them. Promise, I did not plant them. So the CalNet Application Management System, otherwise known as CAMS, we actually had our final release pushed last night successfully. That has enabled us to have our internal customer be able to do be able to order. We are bringing the vendors into the CalNet. They have had a lot of exposure to CalNet already, but we need, with the push of last night, we need now to do all of our user acceptance testing with the vendors. Then our next step, we will start moving into some pilots. So we are still definitely on track for moving forward with CAMS. We will have further JAD sessions. We will not be releasing in a big bang. We will be reaching out to customers that have, say, a like environment for their procurement. If a customer has many layers, known as a parent-child, they would be grouped together because they will have different type of training requirements than, say, an organization that is fairly flat. So we'll be rolling it out in waves, and each group will be able to move more and more customers in groups at the same time.
So for the customer that asked the question about this, we've actually have you on our radar, and we're targeting January, February of 2016 to start engaging with you to identify your business requirements and map those to the CAMS system.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
The other question is also for CalNet. What will replace Centrex? What will replace Centrex?
Thank you. Voice over IP.
What happens if you can't do this?
For what particular reason? Is that? Pardon me?
Microphone.
Oh, is that because you would need particular QoS? I think that we'd probably be wiser to take that offline and really look at what your infrastructure and your services look like right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jan. I thought I saw another question. No? Okay. The next one is related to CGen. This one asks the question about the latest status on the fiber cuts that have been occurring over this summer. And what mitigation steps are the CGen vendors taking? So I'll let Brian go ahead and answer it since he did the incident summary report on these.
Yes, there have been 3 or 4, and one just last week, I believe. The issue has been vandalism in all of those cases. We've worked with both AT&T and Verizon, and we're pursued with the other new CalNet vendors. They respond aggressively to those kinds of events. They notify law enforcement and get the FBI involved. If they're able to identify the perpetrator, then they prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. AT&T is considering in some areas burying their aerial fiber in the ground, but that's potentially an extremely expensive proposition, and they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of aerial fiber. So it's a difficult situation to remedy. We are working with the vendors to try to mitigate those kinds of things. I think that's going to be an evolving situation. So that's about all we have at this point.
Didn't we have some discussion about vendors actually
Labeling.
labeling their resources, especially the aerial or buried, what is copper and what is fiber? They are frequently wrapped together. They're considering, and in many cases have already wrapped them separately, and they label them. If you're going to do this vandalism, please take this part and leave the rest alone. So that is actually real, and I'm talking about as far as buried. I know there were some instances in New York where there was access through manholes, and that's where some of the damage was done. So that is one of the techniques that the vendors have already started implementing in various places.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all the questions that we have. Is there, oh, I see one more. Okay. All right. Okay, the question is moving TMS Basic, when and where?
I mentioned early in his stand-up that as part of the infrastructure changes at OTEC, that TMS Basic, I thought I heard that, and perhaps I'm wrong, but it was being moved. And we just want to know when and where that might occur.
I believe that's scheduled for the 13th, this Sunday.
Okay, that's
There should-
that's related to our defrag project. Okay, that's what you're referring to?
Networking infrastructure, not a movement of actual TMS.
Right.
Correct. That is the network infrastructure that supports TMS that is moving, not TMS itself. There should have been a customer notification that went out and identified customers being impacted.
Okay, all right. This is a question for CalNet. CalNet 3, input from customers and who provided input on CalNet 3?
There was considerable research, not only with the vendors. Of course, we did a lot of market surveys with what the vendors could supply. We had the existing CalNet 2 that we leveraged for the services we knew we needed to continue to provide on CalNet 3. Some of those services were no longer used, and in fact, we did not duplicate them on CalNet 3. There were a variety of reach outs to customers, and this would have been multiple years ago, in order to gather are there any changes, are there any additional services, and that's why you see some services that are on CalNet 3 that were in fact not on CalNet 2.
I think the other thing that we're doing too is that maybe not so much in the past, but going forward, there's a lot more collaboration between the CalNet group and the network group. So they're both in the network, telecom and network division, and so we've really taken a lot of steps to, we've actually formed teams between the two different branches and have them working together on things like CGen, NextGen, and the new categories for CalNet 3 that we're working on, and we're also looking at ways to simplify and streamline when you need a CGen exception and you need a CalNet exemption, and to make that a more streamlined process for customers. So we do also look at some of the exemption requests that come in, and that sometimes can help to identify services that customers need or want. Also, customers do contact us directly, and so when we're putting together the requirements for satellite and the IFBD, basic voice, VoIP. We also got input from customers that reached out to us as well. And then we also reach out to customers to find out if they have a particular need.
And I would encourage you to go to the CalNet website and find the customer service line number, and you're more than welcome to contact the staff that man that and pose your questions, and it would give us obviously some things to consider going forward that we might want to include in future releases of CalNet 3, or it won't be too long, and CalNet 3 has already been almost out there for 2 years, so within probably 12 to 18 months, we'll actually have to start talking about CalNet 4.
Okay, this is also a CalNet question. CalNet 3 support issues, SLA enforcement.
So I'm not knowing specifically what this customer, their concerns are. Again, I would encourage use of the same customer service line. If you have issues with a particular vendor, then that is what that line is there for. And there are multiple engineers within the CalNet branch, and they are there to serve you and sort through issues. I have one person on the team that is specifically focused on SLAs. Again, not knowing the particular issue, please contact us so that we can take it offline and work with you one-on-one. If it's billing, if it's performance, that is exactly what this team is about. That is really the primary purpose of contract management.
Right. In addition, myself, Jan, Brian, and several members of the network and CalNet teams meet regularly, weekly, with 2 of the largest CalNet vendors. We meet with the other newer CalNet vendors as well, but the 2 largest ones, the incumbent ones, Verizon and AT&T, we meet frequently with them to go over issues that we know are impacting customers, and also work with them on corrective action plans. So if we know that customers across the board are experiencing problems with their service, then we're working with them to, have them put in place corrective action so that we can get the service to, a better state.
And please do not overlook your customer delivery people. They are familiar with all the services, of course, that OTEC offers, and they are also a very valuable conduit to both Brian on the technical side as well as me on the contract side. And again, to Barbara's earlier point, we are working collaboratively because it's not just a single layer service that we provide. So be sure to go through your customer rep as well.
Okay, and the last question is about procurements and having just-in-time capability.
So just-in-time is something I guess you could say is sort of the basis of CalNet because you're not having to do a procurement on your own, which can require months of effort. The services are readily just-in-time, the Form 20 process doesn't flip things on within, 24 hours, but it is there for the purposes of pre-vetted vendors, pre-vetted services, SLAs, and so forth, for us to be able to move you into a service as quickly as possible. You want to call that as close to just-in-time?
And I'm going to ask David, I don't know if that
answer?
answered your question, or?
Yes, no.
Maybe you can give us a little bit more.
Just in time, when I worked for the feds, was a term that the procurement used for more common purchases, right? Pencils, paper, in your case, routers, switches, things you would commonly use every day. Customers use services all the time. And I think for just in time, meant like if you could reach out to a vendor, Cisco, or if you got AT&T has all Cisco switches, all Cisco routers, then you would have the 1900 series, 2900 series, 3900 series routers available through contract where they put the Form 20 in, you get it in less than 30 days, the vendors are all waiting, instead of the prolonged 45, 60, 90-day processes that are in place today. I didn't learn, and I think my prior question was related to maybe in education. If we, as a customer, had known, maybe there's a web page that maybe it exists right now today and I don't know about it, whereas when we place an order for a new service, then there are constraints, I learned this week through your customer rep, that are tied to a particular type of service and how long it takes to get it and how long it takes the equipment to be ordered, and, et cetera. Then we, the customer, can incorporate it in our planning efforts and not be so stressed about, well, if we had only known, right? So we do rely on our customer rep, does a great job for us. I want to say thanks to Dave. But that's the kind of question I was asking. I'm sorry for the short sentence.
I think the idea with CalNet, and remember it's telecommunications and network services, and there is, in CalNet 3, the equipment, so the routers and switches and things like that are no longer available.
CalNet 2 is still in force, and there is hardware procurement off of CalNet 2. It did not move into CalNet 3. I think I'm familiar with your struggles. It came to my attention yesterday, and on the CalNet side, there are definitely some things that we need to work through and work them through quicker for you. And again, this is where Brian and I and Brian's team and my team are working more collaboratively, and that will be a joint effort to move you forward faster with the services I know you're looking for.
Okay. All right, well, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to come out here, and hopefully this was helpful and informative. The next network forum will be the first quarter of 2016, so we'll get information out on that one. Thank you.